Hello, welcome to AddOneBit. Today we're going to talk about one of the most influential books on personal finance ever written, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. This book has sold over 40 million copies worldwide and has completely changed how millions of people think about money. Whether you're a student, a working professional, or someone who wants to understand money better, this book has lessons that can transform your financial future. So let's dive deep into what makes this book so special and what we can learn from it. Before we begin, if you find this video helpful, please like and subscribe to support the channel. Now let's get started. The story of Rich Dad Poor Dad is quite unique. Robert Kiyosaki grew up in Hawaii with two father figures who had completely opposite views about money. His biological father was highly educated, holding a PhD and working in a prestigious position in the education department. This was his poor dad. His best friend Mike's father, on the other hand, didn't have much formal education but was a successful entrepreneur and businessman. This was his rich dad. What's fascinating is that both these men worked hard and were intelligent, but they had completely different philosophies about money. One focused on job security and academic success. The other focused on building assets and financial independence. Young Robert had the unique opportunity to observe both these men closely and learn from their different approaches. And what he discovered changed his entire perspective on wealth and money. So what was the main difference between the poor dad and the rich dad? The poor dad believed in the traditional path. He would say things like, go to school, get good grades, find a secure job with good benefits, and work hard. He believed that a good education would lead to a good job, which would lead to financial security. He emphasized saving money, avoiding risks, and living within your means. For him, the house you live in was your biggest asset. He believed in job security and climbing the corporate ladder. The rich dad had a completely different philosophy. He believed that traditional education doesn't teach you about money. He would say, the rich don't work for money, they make money work for them. Instead of focusing on job security, he focused on financial education. Instead of working hard for someone else, he believed in building businesses and acquiring assets that generate income. He saw opportunities where others saw risks. The poor dad would say, I can't afford it. The rich dad would ask, how can I afford it? See the difference? One statement shuts down your thinking. The other opens up possibilities and forces you to find creative solutions. The poor dad worked for money his entire life. The rich dad built systems and investments that generated money for him, even when he wasn't actively working. This fundamental difference in mindset is what the entire book is built upon. And it's what separates those who struggle financially from those who achieve financial independence. One of the most important lessons from Rich Dad Poor Dad is understanding the difference between assets and liabilities. And Kiyosaki's definition is beautifully simple. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. That's it. Simple, right? But here's where it gets interesting. Most people think their house is their biggest asset. But according to Kiyosaki, if you're living in that house and paying a mortgage, it's actually a liability.
Why?
Because every month, money flows out of your pocket to pay for it. Now, if you own a rental property that generates income, that's an asset because money flows into your pocket from the rent. The rich focus on acquiring assets. The poor and middle class acquire liabilities but think they're assets. Let me give you some examples of assets. Rental real estate that generates positive cash flow, businesses that operate without requiring your constant presence, stocks that pay dividends, bonds, royalties from intellectual property, and anything else that generates income for you. Examples of liabilities include a car that you're making payments on, the house you live in if you have a mortgage, credit card debt, consumer loans, and basically anything that requires you to spend money to maintain it. The rich dad taught young Robert to focus all his energy on building the asset column. Every dollar that came in should be used to acquire more assets. Over time, the income from these assets would grow and eventually exceed his expenses. That's when true financial freedom begins. The poor and middle class work hard, earn money, pay taxes, and then spend what's left on liabilities. They get stuck in what Kiyosaki calls the rat race, working harder and harder but never getting ahead financially. The key lesson here is simple but powerful. Stop buying liabilities and start building assets. Make every financial decision with this question in mind. Is this putting money in my pocket or taking money out? The rich dad placed enormous emphasis on financial education, and this is something our traditional school system completely ignores. Think about it. We spend years in school learning history, science, mathematics, and literature. But how many of us learned about taxes, investing, compound interest, or how to read a financial statement? Almost none. Kiyosaki argues that this is by design. The education system was created to produce good employees, not financially independent individuals. It teaches us to work for money, not how to make money work for us. The rich dad taught Robert and Mike about money through practical lessons, not textbooks. He taught them by actually involving them in his businesses, showing them financial statements, explaining investment opportunities, and letting them make mistakes in a safe environment. Financial education includes understanding how taxes work, how corporations operate, the difference between good debt and bad debt, how investments generate returns, and how to identify opportunities. One powerful example from the book. The rich dad explained that employees work and pay taxes on their full income. But business owners earn money, spend on their business expenses, and then pay taxes only on what's left. This is a huge advantage that most people don't understand. The lesson is clear. Invest in your financial education. Read books, attend seminars, find mentors, study investments, and never stop learning about money. This knowledge will serve you far better than any degree. Another key lesson from the book is to mind your own business. What does this mean? Most people confuse their profession with their business. Your profession is what you do for a living. You might be a teacher, engineer, or doctor. But your business is your asset column, what generates income for you. The rich dad advised, keep your day job, but start building your asset column on the side. Don't spend all your income on liabilities. Use it to acquire income-generating assets. For example, you might work as a software engineer during the day, but in your spare time, you're building a portfolio of dividend-paying stocks, or acquiring rental properties, or building a side business. The goal is to eventually have your assets generate more income than your expenses. When that happens, you're financially free. You can choose to work because you want to, not because you have to. Many people make the mistake of thinking that a higher salary solves their money problems. But Kiyosaki points out that without financial intelligence, more money often just means more spending and more liabilities. The solution is to mind your own business. Focus on building your assets regardless of what your profession is. In the book, Kiyosaki introduces a concept called the Cash Flow Quadrant. This divides how people earn money into 4 categories: employee, self-employed, business owner, and investor. Employees trade their time for money. They have the least control and pay the most in taxes. Security is their primary goal. Self-employed people own their job. They're doctors, lawyers, consultants, or freelancers. They have more control than employees, but they're still trading time for money. If they stop working, the income stops. Business owners have systems and people working for them. They've built something that generates income whether they're actively working or not. They have leverage. Investors make money work for them. They use money to generate more money through investments. The left side of the quadrant, employee and self-employed, is where most people operate. They trade time for money and are limited by the number of hours they can work. The right side, business owner and investor, is where the wealthy operate. They have leverage and their income isn't directly tied to their time. The rich dad's advice was to move from the left side to the right side of the quadrant. Start as an employee if you must, but work toward building businesses and making investments. This is how you achieve financial freedom. Each quadrant requires different skills and mindsets. Moving from left to right requires financial education, taking calculated risks, and developing new skills. One of the biggest obstacles to wealth that Kiyosaki discusses is fear. Fear of losing money, fear of failure, fear of criticism, and fear of the unknown. The poor dad was motivated by fear, fear of not having enough, fear of losing his job, fear of not having security. This fear kept him playing it safe and staying in the rat race. The rich dad acknowledged fear but didn't let it control his decisions. He taught that failure is part of the learning process. In fact, the more you fail and learn, the more successful you'll eventually become. Think about it. Most people are so afraid of losing money that they never invest. But by not investing, they're guaranteed to lose through inflation and missed opportunities. The rich dad said that the biggest risk is not taking any risks. Playing it safe might feel comfortable, but it keeps you stuck. The lesson here is to acknowledge your fears, but take action anyway. Start small if you need to. Make mistakes, learn from them, and keep moving forward. Financial education reduces fear because you understand what you're doing. Every successful investor has lost money. Every successful entrepreneur has failed. The difference is they didn't let fear stop them from trying again. Another interesting concept from the book is working to learn rather than working to earn. The poor dad believed in specializing, becoming very good at one thing and climbing the ladder in that field. The rich dad believed in learning broadly, gaining skills in sales, marketing, finance, management, and communication. Young Robert worked in different roles in the rich dad's businesses, not for money, but to learn different skills. He learned about sales, accounting, management, and investing. The rich dad explained that many talented people remain poor because they focus only on perfecting their craft while neglecting skills like sales and marketing. A great engineer who can't sell will struggle more than an average engineer who understands sales. The lesson is to view your job as a learning opportunity. What skills can you develop that will help you build wealth? Don't just focus on your paycheck. Focus on what you're learning and how it contributes to your long-term financial goals.